Humans are weird. What's the word? Quilksich tried not to slump with irritation as he followed his agitated colleague down the hall to the primary computer banks. The mix of bovine protein he was experimenting with had almost reached the temperature point just before boiling when he was forced by professional courtesy to prematurely end the experiment. Of course, he could always heat the substance again, but his human contact assured him that this would cause molecular-level disfigurement that would completely ruin the final consistency of the desired product. Quilsich shot a glance as the hind legs of his colleague and surreptitiously triggered the recording function of his tablet. "Call Pele about possible workarounds for cheesecake recipe," he softly clicked. "Are you paying attention?" his colleague demanded. "Not entirely," Quilkich admitted. "Not until we get to the screens where I can actually see the evidence." His colleague bristled in annoyance, but waved a manipulator in acceptance of his logic. "You say you have proof of various humans displaying this behavior more than once?" Quilsich asked in an attempt to get his mind focused. "No," his colleague flicked his back leg in correction. "I only managed to record the behavior once. However, I have notes on the majority of similar cases. I have far too much experience with our newest biped friends," Quilsich began, "to ask why you do not simply describe the behavior." "Thank you," the other replied, relaxing a little as they entered the comfortable-sized room built just for Trisk bodies and minds. "However, why did you not just play the video on our mobile devices?" Quilsich asked, as his colleague waved him over a three-dimensional display. "Given that the behavior does not appear to be conscious, I thought it best to avoid any shame reactions if it is noted," his colleague explained. "When have you ever," Quilsich demanded, "seen one of these spacefaring humans display a shame reflex?" "Look," his colleague pointed to the display as it began to play. "Just watch the human!" Quilsich bristled himself a bit at the rudeness but focused on the scene. The humans was sitting at his workstation while several Trisk worked around him, the massive human desk providing for nearly 20 Trisk work clusters. The humans was poised in a position that Quilsich had come to associate with maximum productivity. His internal skeleton held the massive mammalian muscles rigidly up, and his fingers flew over the interface surface. From the looks of it, the high-ranking ranger was composing a final report from all of the field data gathered on the economically vital space whales. Suddenly, however, the rapid tapping of the human's fingers faltered and paused. Quilsich titled his head in interest. The human pulled his flexible upper lip in between his gleaming white teeth and chewed on it a moment, causing Quilsich to flinch in distress. One hand slid off of the active surface and began taping idly on the desk frame, sending tremors through the superstructure that called the attention of all the Trisk present to the unconscious human. "Grast!" the human suddenly called out. Quilsich bristled a bit at the rudeness of the sudden interruption. He knew humans were abrupt, but this one did not even lift his eyes to the Trisk he addressed. "Keep watching," his colleague muttered. Quilsich obeyed. "What is that word?" the human demanded, presumably of Grast. The main structure of the human's dominant arm was now pointed in the generally direction of the Trisk, who had first responded, but the hand was twisting around in a circular gesture that caused the pointing finger to encompass 3/4 of the room. "That word that means how things, how things go together. But fancy for the report." The various Trisk were now glancing at each other in confusion. "Dynamics!" the human suddenly shouted. His hands immediately began flying across the active screen, and he grinned in delight. "Thanks, Grast!" the human called out. After a long pause, one Trisk raised a manipulating appendage in confused consent. "You are welcome," he replied. "You're the best lil bud," the human said. The replay ended, and Quilsich looked into his colleague's eyes with resigned confusion. "I have no comments to add to your research," Quilsich stated firmly. Perhaps if he hurried, he could save his cheesecake. Humans are weird. Here there be dragons. The humans on the base were excited. No one was particularly concerned about this fact yet. The planet they were on was mild even by the standards of the ungulates, who found a mere 2 degrees of temperature drift uncomfortable. The base was well built and meant to provide comfort and protection in equal parts. Most importantly, the base commander was a Shatar with half a lifetime of experience dealing with human madness. All factors considered, the inhabitants of the base were interested and watchful. Gruska had not yet determined what the humans were excited about, but the general emotional expressions were smiles and laughter and light steps, so he was hopeful that it was to be a pleasant surprise. Still, hope was one thing, evidence was another. which was why he had sought out the apparent source of the expectation. "Friend Helen!" Gruska called out as he skittered up to her, all 6 of his motile legs working overtime to keep up with her bipedal stride. "May I speak to you?" "Sure thing, Grits, buddy," Helen called out. There was bright energy in her voice, and Gruska felt his own spirits lift at the sound. He leapt eagerly into the hand she proffered and perched there as she brought him up to her face. "What do you want to know?" she asked. "It has been noted that the humans seem to be expecting something," Gruska pointed out. "I would like to know what you are anticipating." "Well, Grits," Helen said, her voice interrupted by a giggle. "We weren't sure it was going to work out, so we didn't say anything, but my request for a new pet finally came through." "Ah," Gruska said, bringing his primary manipulators up to his mandibles. "A pet is a companion animal, yes?" "Yep," Helen said brightly. Her head nodded eagerly, and her brilliant gold head covering bounced entrancingly. "We don't dare bring any Earth creatures to this world. They would muck up the ecosystem pretty bad, so one of the domestication crews went out to the southern seas to look for something pet-worthy. Well, they found a nice little warm-blooded lizard thing that fits all the criteria, and because it needs to be tested out on planet before they go off-world, this base and me—" Her voice rose, and she skipped a little. "Gets to test out the first pet forms." "And this creature is arriving when?" Gruska asked cautiously. He knew what humans considered suitable pets. "Now!" Helen nearly squealed out. "The crate is landing now!" Gruska realized that Helen's steps had taken them to the transport bay, and indeed there was a carrier drone approaching with a crate about the size of an undulate. A low hiss came from the crate as it settled onto the reception platform. "Upsy!" Helen called out as she set Gruska on her shoulder. "I can't wait to see my new baby." Gruska watched as she opened the crate and tenderly pulled out a horrifying creature of the abyss. Twin pairs of forward-facing hunter eyes blinked at him. It seemed to be ignoring its new master as she cooed over it. Its well-defined, human-like muscles tensed and relaxed under its shimmering opalescent skin. The scales that covered the skin gave the beast a dark blue coloration that shifted as Helen stroked her hands over it. "Isn't he adorable?" Helen crooned. "Adorable," Gruska automatically agreed. The animal flicked a forked tongue out of his mouth and pulled its lips back to reveal dozens of razor-sharp teeth. "Adorable," Gruska whispered as he slunk back under Helen's hair. "Humans are weird. That is not a snake." "It's cool, guys!" Sergeant Grimes waved up at the tree-like plants that now hid 2 flights of the winged. A bright copper head about the size of a golf ball poked out of a cluster of mauve leaves, and twin black eyes glared down at him from under 10 horns. "If it is all cool," 25 Clicks demanded, "then why did you just leap half your height into air and scream out a profanity?" "There was a cable on the ground," Grimes said, pointed down at the offending item. He bent down and scooped up the length of cable, holding it up for the flights to see. Slowly more heads popped out of the foliage and glared at the item. Grimes stifled a laugh at the image of a tree full of small, angry berries. "Why?" 25 Clicks asked as he fluttered down to land on Grimes' shoulder. "Did you display a fantastic leap for a human over a harmless piece of trash?" "I thought it was a snake," Grimes said with a shrug. He shoved the cable into his backpack as the rest of the flights circled around him. "That," 25 Clicks said, "looks nothing like the 3 other items that you claimed triggered this snake response." "Does to a human," Grimes replied cheerfully. "And besides, there are lots of snakes. Could look like most any crawly thing. Or it is a complicated plot to frighten our species away from this horrific planet full of snakes," a voice muttered from the trees. "An able defense of your homeworld." "No snakes in the north and south," Grimes corrected as he started walking again. "You mean the places that are constantly covered in ice?" another voice demanded. "Look," Grimes said with a shrug, "it's a choice. You live where the air hurts your face, or you live where you might get a death bite by a nope rope at any step." 25 Clicks bit back a hiss and reminded himself that the human made them safer. He could put up with the strangeness. "Humans are weird human nonsense." "I really think it is just their pattern seeking manifesting," Twistunder insisted for the 3rd time. No one was really satisfied with this answer, least of all him. However, no one in the huddle of undulates around the datapad argued against the assertion or offered any better explanation. Twistunder ran his best sensory appendage over the screen again just in case he had missed some detail in the image. He hadn't. Perhaps we are missing the details due to visual differences, one of the physiologists suggested. I mean, the meaning might be far simpler than we are assuming. Well, that is a given, another pointed out. All of the charcoal-based iridescence is the same color, or rather lack of color to them. Black lines, the first agreed. It makes it hard to say how much we should read into details that we can see, but they cannot. Even though they created them, a third said. The huddle fell silent again. Someone absently stroked Twistunder in a comforting gesture, and he returned it. "Cuddle puddle," Twistunder muttered. "Say what?" inquired someone from the bottom of the pile. "I speculate that this," Twistunder lightly touched one of the more confusing images on the screen, "indicates what we are doing now, a communal huddle. They have labeled it a cuddle puddle." A hum of thoughtful consideration ran through the huddle as they considered the mass of lines the human had drawn. "It is the right number of appendages," someone offered, "approximately, if I am seeing this correctly." "So the question is," Twistunder finally stated, "is this an honest attempt at training material, or is it a joke?" The huddle fell silent as they examined the primitive visual representations. Twistunder detached himself and mimicked the first entry, twisting himself into a tight and uncomfortable circle. "Bagel," one colleague read from the sheet. "Small friend is lonely. Apply pats." "Simplistic," Twistunder observed, "but not inaccurate. I wouldn't mind a human attempting to physically comfort me if I were in that state honestly," another observed. He curled his appendages under himself and let his notochord relax. "Underloaf," his colleague read. "Small friend is much content, but a lil not warms. Cuddles or to make it warm, suggested." "Again simplistic," Twistunder began. "And grammatically nightmarish," a linguist added. "But accurate as far as it goes," Twistunder finished. "I propose we analyze each image thus. One of us attempts to mimic the drawing, and then we analyze the text." "And then ask the humans what this nonsense is?" asked the most experienced ambassador. "And then ask the humans what this nonsense is," Twistunder confirmed.